I'm Emily Blanck, and today we're going to talk about how to develop a really strong research question. A good research question is really important because it is the basis of a research paper. And moreover, your thesis statement is an answer to that question. Therefore, without a good research question, you're not going to have a good paper. So if you write a weak research question, your paper is inevitably going to be weak. So let's talk a little bit about how that's done. So to start out, we're going to watch this short video. It's kind of a plain video, but it really explains the process of developing a research question and gets to most of the main points. After you watch this, we'll talk about how to write a good history question.
In many of the college classes that rely a lot on writing, you may hear your instructors refer to something that's known as the research question, which can be kind of vague and frustrating if it's not explained very well. What is it? Why do I need it? And where do I get one? This video is going to tackle all of these questions, but first, let's break down the definition of research question. It's a clear, focused, concise, complex, and arguable question around which you center your research. Or it's just a thing that's meant to frustrate and confuse students throughout college writing. But hopefully after this video, research questions will be a little less confusing and frustrating. So why do I need a research question? Well, a research question helps you keep your research focused and on track. If you've ever had one of those experiences where you waited till the last minute to write your paper and you just all of a sudden started typing out your writing, and a few hours later you read back over it and you realize, oh, this doesn't make sense, there's no clear focus, there's no clear line of thought. Well, a research question will help you avoid that. But a research question is also very important because the answer to this question will actually turn into your thesis statement or the main argument of your paper. So it's important to make sure that your research question is strong. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to walk you through a few steps that have helped me as I come up with research questions for my own writing. The first one is to find an issue that interests you. No matter what class you're in, try to find a way to connect that class to something that you're already interested in. Say you're in a psych class, but you want to be a vet. Well, you could look at how pets affect our psychological health. Maybe you're a women's studies major and you're in a computer science class, and you want to know why there aren't more women in technology-related fields. Or maybe you're an early childhood education major and you're in a nutrition class. Well, you could explore childhood obesity and how to avoid it. Step 2, explore this issue. Just do a quick Google search. For the purpose of this video, I'm actually going to look at women and I'm going to look at the issue of women and how few of them are actually in computer-related fields. This is an issue that I'm really interested in. So if I do a quick search on Google with these terms, I come across as my first hit a Wikipedia article, which I can't use to cite in my paper as a credible source, but it is a great place to start for ideas. And in this article, I found this really interesting quote that tells me that even though teenage girls are using computers at the same rate as teenage guys, they're still much less likely to consider a degree in a technology-related field. Well, I want to know why that is. So I start asking questions about it. I start asking, well, is it important for women to pursue computer-related jobs, and why? Why are there so few girls in computer-related degrees? How can we encourage girls to be more involved in computer technology? And who else cares about this issue? Why is it important? Step 4, start refining and focusing my question. Just because I have a research question doesn't necessarily mean it's a good question. So we're going to go through a couple of bad questions and talk about how to make them better. First bad question, when did the first woman graduate with a degree in computer science? This isn't such a great question because there's really only one answer to this. There is no way to argue or defend or explore this question very well. A better question would be, when, during their college career, do girls usually drop out of computer science programs? And how can we prevent this from happening? This is a question that I can actually explore and then take a stance or position on and then defend. Another bad question is, why do girls hate computers? Well, there's several reasons why this is a bad question. One of them is it's pretty general. It's blanketly stating that all girls hate computers, which isn't necessarily true. There's also really no way to explore or actually defend a feeling. You can't really tell me why girls hate computers. This isn't a question I can actually research. A better question is, why are girls dropping out of computer science programs at higher rates than guys? This is an issue I can dig into, I can come to an opinion on, and then defend. So, as you start coming up with and exploring research questions of your own, here are a few closing rules of thumbs to remember. 1. Avoid yes or no questions. Ask questions that might have multiple answers or opinions. This leads us to question 2. If you don't ask yes or no questions, you'll start coming up with questions that require you to explain or defend your answer. They'll make you take a stance, which is what you're looking to do in college papers. And then finally, 3, ask a question that can be tackled within your page limit. Don't pick a question that is so broad that you find yourself going on and on and on and overreaching your page limit. Find something that's manageable and that's small enough that you can actually answer in the page limit that you're given by your instructors.
So the qualities of a good research question are covered very well in that video. As Jules Benjamin says in this quote that we have on this PowerPoint, a good research question needs to be debatable, it needs to be significant, it needs to be narrow, and it needs to be researchable. Those 4 qualities are really important. 3 of those qualities were covered in the video. She talked about how a debatable question, a question with multiple answers, is essential. It's also really important that the question is narrow so that the paper is the right length for the question that you're asking. And then also, she did a good job in describing that you need to have a question that somebody cares about, that the reader is going to actually want to read. But she did not talk as much about how to develop a researchable question, and that's crucial in developing a history question since our work is based on evidence. And so I want to talk a little bit about writing a good research question. So when we focus on what a researchable question is, I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. First, do documents exist that can answer the question? So this is really important for a lot of histories of non-elites. We don't know the history of how American Indians acquired language or basic language uses of American Indians because there are no documents from the American Indians before contact. And so we can't tell anything about that past because the documents just don't exist. Likewise, this is a similar question, but from a different angle. Can this question be answered using documents? So this might relate to psychological states, but it also might relate to everyday or taboo topics. So we cannot get to the psychological state, a verifiable psychological state of somebody in the past. If you ask any psychologist, what's important when you want to find out the psychological state, to assess somebody's psychological state, you need to talk to them. You need to get an intimate discussion. That's impossible with somebody from the past. So those kinds of questions just don't work. Likewise, if you're asking about really everyday life or taboo life, that is going to also be very difficult to answer because people just don't write about it. And especially if this doesn't have any material culture that's associated with it. So for instance, on a more humorous note, we might not be able to write the history of nose picking because there's no history written about that. So counter history is another idea that you might have played around with, talked with your friends, but may not have ever thought of as being a problem. Counter history is the history of things that did not happen. So one question that we might ask is, if Hitler hadn't died, would have Europe's economy recovered? And we'd love to answer that question, but Hitler died. That's a fact we can't erase. And there are no documents existing after Hitler's death to explain the recovery of European economy with him being alive. They just don't exist. So we can't ask those kinds of questions. This is also really common in military history. People have a desire to ask questions about whether a maneuver was important. And so they'll say, if we had done a different maneuver, or if a leader had acted in a different way, would this have been a better outcome? And we just can't answer those questions because we can't have any documents for history that didn't happen. So in the end, remember to be very thoughtful about writing your research question. Make sure it's debatable, make sure it's narrow, make sure it's significant, and make sure it's researchable. And that will be the beginning of a fantastic research paper. Thank you.